Hi teacher friends, let's talk about differentiation. Differentiation is taking a look at your activities, your lesson plans, and taking a look at your assessment data and ensuring that you are meeting the needs of every student in your classroom. You may have a student that doesn't recognize 1 through 5 yet, right? They're here. You might have another student all the way at the other end of your spectrum that can recognize 1 through 20. So you have a big range to work in here, and you need to make sure that you're meeting the needs of every student within this range, okay? Meeting this person's needs, challenging this person's needs, okay? So it needs to be, when you're differentiating and when you're thinking about planning these activities, developmentally appropriate, important. Make sure they're interest of the children, and children have a choice of how they learn this information. It needs to be meaningful. It needs to be relevant to the kids. Have you ever tried to learn something that has no meaning to you? It's very difficult, and you have no interest in it. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't soak in very well. So if you're making sure it's meaningful and it's relevant to your students in your classroom, you got it covered. Make sure your activities meet learning goals. Where do you find your goals? Where do you find your objectives? Well, you go to your curriculum. Creative curriculum, high scope, North Carolina Standard Course of Study, NC Foundations. You come here for your goals and your objectives, and you can meet the needs of your elements. This is a great resource for strategies of how to meet your goals, and a lot of it is differentiated all in here. So take a look at your foundation book. It's a great resource for you. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 ways you can differentiate. So I have up here on my bubble map, I'm going to try to use a dark marker so that you can see it. Differentiation. Okay, that's what we're talking about today. You can differentiate your content. Sorry if you can't read that very well, but this says content. So your 1, 2, 3s, your ABCs, you can differentiate that. Maybe you give a child, one child can handle A through Z. Once you've introduced all the letters, they can handle all the letters at one time, and you can work with them. You may have another student that you can only give 2 letters at a time or 4 letters at a time. But you assess them. How are they doing? Can I add more? Do I need to take some away? And that's how you differentiate for that child or for those children. Okay? Let's talk about the process. So visually, your process. Visually, so here's process. Let's see, this is content, right? Your process. Visually, you'll need to do some for some students, right? Their eyes need to see it. Some of them, their ears need to hear it. And some of them, their bodies need to move to it, right? You need to use their bodies and get their bodies engaged. And that's the process of how they're learning. Differentiate there. Differentiate your product, your end product. How do you want the children to represent what they know? Again, child choice. It's not my choice how they represent, but what will they go to, do we think? And what materials can we provide for them to show what they know? Some of them painting, art, writing. Some of them, the product. Some of them will want to build and represent what they know in blocks and building that. Some of them acting it out, right? So maybe we can videotape them acting out a favorite book or their characters, their settings. That's that's the product. Let's talk about the learning environment. This is a big one. How do you differentiate? You probably already do this and you just don't know it. But when you differentiate your product or your environment, your learning environment, maybe you're adding things to centers and see how it works, see what the children do with them. Can I tweak it a little bit? Can I add more? Do I need to take some of it away? Maybe it's too overwhelming. And then we can build up from there. Okay, so your learning environment are your centers that you can change. You also can differentiate your large group, your small groups. Maybe they work better in partners, maybe individually. Maybe you need to go to that child individually and work one-on-one, and then you can add partner work to it maybe. Maybe then in large group that they'll get more in large group. Okay, that's one thing. One thing to keep in mind in differentiating, and what's a little bit different in pre-K than kindergarten. Kindergarten's differentiation may be giving a worksheet 1 through 5, 1 through 10, 1 through 15. In pre-K, we are very developmentally appropriate. We are hands-on, we are active learners. We need to touch it, we need to feel it, we need to use our senses in order to learn it. So that means working in centers. Everything we learn should be learning, not everything we learn, I mean we learn in large group and then we go and practice it out in centers, right? That means you as a teacher are the biggest differentiation person out there. You go into centers and you start talking to the children. So your differentiation may be, hey Susie, tell me about your picture. Open-ended questions, right? But then you've got Bobby over here who can't answer that, or doesn't have the verbal skills, or doesn't have the speech, or maybe is an English language learner. And you can say, what's this right here? And be more specific, or yes or no questions, more closed questions. But the goal is to get open-ended questions and get the children talking. Get the children explaining what they know, how they know it. Other children are hearing children talking, then they want to add some in. And then so you're all discussing, you're just having that conversation back and forth with the children. And it kind of naturally differentiates that ways too. But what's the key ingredient there? You as the teacher in centers. That's you on the floor in blocks. That's you in housekeeping, modeling how to maybe read a menu and then take your order, and then next thing you know the children are taking their order and they're writing, and maybe it's a squiggle for one student, but for another student they want to spell out bacon. Bacon. What sound do you hear? But we talked about that sound, do you remember? And then you're helping them sound out words. Differentiation. One child scribbles, another child is actually writing the letter B or writing the sounds that they hear. But that takes you in the centers working on that, okay? Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Another important piece to differentiation is assessment. All the while, all this is going on is you writing anecdotal notes, you having check sheets, you having goals, specific goals that you're trying to meet, and you working in centers with the child wherever they are. Maybe you know that their favorite center is Magnetiles. They love Magnetiles. What can you add to Magnetiles to help meet a specific goal? Maybe it's a social emotional goal. And a child doesn't know how to interplay. And all he does is go over to their blocks and knock down another child's tower every time. So that takes you, in order to meet that social emotional goal for that child, going over in blocks, sitting down and saying, maybe encouraging them, no, you can't knock down their tower, but you may knock down your tower. Build your tower and knock it down. Build it up again and knock it down. But that's not really what he wants, and you know it. He really wants to play with that other child. So you give him the words. So you've helped him learn how to meet that goal by giving him the words. Okay, say, may I play with you? And then you encourage the other child who is afraid he's going to knock down his tower. Say, sure, come on in. Now listen, he said he wants to play with you, but he doesn't want you to knock down his tower. Right? So you're meeting these goals, but it takes you going into centers and making sure the goals are met for each child. That's individualization. That's sometimes you can group these children together that it's a specific goal that need to work on together, and you can have a small group to meet that goal. So just keep that in mind when you're differentiating. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.